I love to laugh, and I love to tease my little brother. Did you hear the one about Mark Berg about getting killed by a tree a couple weeks ago? I was talking with him, and we were kidding around, and I said, well, I'll sing at your funeral. And he looked me eye to eye, and he said, Judy, I hope you go first. That really is my joke. It didn't happen, but I was talking to Mark about it last week, and he's still a little fuzzy about situations surrounding his accident, stupidity, I don't know what it was. But he said, did I really say that? No, he didn't. But I will sing at his funeral if I don't go first. So anyway, this passage of the Bible that we read this morning, I think it's familiar to most of it. It has spoken to me my entire life. I can identify with this young woman. She was a member, a citizen of her hometown where Jesus was walking through. Now, if you remember the story, he had just thrown a bunch of pigs down a ravine. He was across the lake. He'd just come over across the lake, and he's out walking through this town. And there was a man that came up to him and wanted him to go to his house and heal his daughter who was dying. So they were walking along. Now, this woman, I think, small town, Stockwell's small town, right? And everybody knows everybody else. You know the gossip. And this girl grew up. She had a family, a mother and a father, probably siblings, and she learned to be a good Jewish girl and learned how to take care of her home and be a good wife and mother. Okay, so that's kind of me. I grew up in the church. I identify with this lady. I grew up in the church. My father was a minister. I was born in Greencastle, Indiana, and when I was a year old, we moved to Lafayette, of all places. And he was minister at Brown Street United Methodist Church until I was 5. I was a very painfully shy child until I was in middle school. There was a point when we lived in Lafayette that people asked if I was mute because I didn't talk. I've always had trouble talking to people, believe it or not. And when I was 5, we moved to Dyer, Indiana, which is up in Lake County. That is where I call my hometown. And back in those days, in the 60s and 70s, it was a town everybody knew everybody else. And you knew everybody's business. And that is where I grew up, on Church Street, next to the church. And we played in the church parking lot. That is where Mark and I and my sister, and my older brother and sister probably didn't have the same experience, but us 3 youngers, we grew up in the church parking lot. And all the neighborhood kids came. Kind of like here, I've seen when I come here in the evenings, kids out playing in the park or they're out riding their bikes and stuff. That was my life, playing Batman out in the middle of the church parking lot. So if you can imagine. I put on Facebook this week, I want to share it with you as a little post. With a cape and a tiara, I could rule the world. With a cape and a tiara, I could rule the world. And as a little girl, I played Batman. I was Batman. And to this day, Batman is my hero. I even have a bat room, which is my bathroom. It's the bat room. And good stuff. But I grew up in the church. Every time the church doors were open, I was there. I was groomed to be a young Methodist young lady. And actually, I groomed myself to be a church musician. I loved the Sunday school songs from the time I could walk. And when I was in the 7th grade, I was 12 years old. 12 is going to be a very important number today. I found out I could sing. And all of a sudden, this very shy girl that could not speak. If a teacher called on me, I could not. I'd turn all shades of red. Couldn't answer. I had a voice, and it was awesome. And time went on, and Still in the same church. I was lucky enough as a Methodist minister's daughter to grow up in the same church. He was Methodist minister there for 22 years until he died. He died in 1987, and I was 26 years old. I was still a member of the church every time it was open. I was a church musician. I played the piano. I directed children's choirs. You know, church was it. I think this young woman in the story, I think she knew how to be a member of her community, as I did. Now, this is the prequel, okay? We know what prequels are. The story in the Bible, we don't know much about this woman, but said she bled. She had a hemorrhage for 12 years. We don't know where the hemorrhage was. I have a picture that this woman was married, had a child, and had problems after that. Maybe she had a uterine cancer, but I picture just ongoing problems for 12 years. Never stopped bleeding after this child was born. That's the way I kind of see it. And when you're a member of the Jewish community, when you're bleeding, you're unclean. So she was probably, I hate to use the word ostracized, but people couldn't come talk to her. She may have lived in a house, may have been a separate room. She may have lived on the edge of town. We don't know what happened to her, but she was apparently, most likely, cut off from her community, her family, her friends, and maybe that baby that she might have had. So she couldn't be part of that community. Well, I identify with that. Do you remember 12 years? She was bleeding for 12 years. Gracie, stand up a minute, would you? Gracie's birthday is today, and she is 11 years old today, starting her 12th year. 12 years. That's her whole life. This woman was bleeding. You can sit down. Sorry to point you out, but happy birthday. Jessie Chase is another one of my piano students. She's 13. That's her whole life, almost. But I can't point her out today because she's showing pics. That's a long time. About the time my father died, not too long after that, I had a born-again experience. That doesn't happen to Methodists too much. You don't hear about, but I did. And I guess I can tell you about it. I worked in Chicago. I'm a legal secretary by trade. I've been that since 1981. Right now, I work as an office manager in a small law firm. I love it, absolutely love it. And I give piano lessons a couple of evenings a week, looking to do more than that. But anyway, I was working in Chicago as a legal secretary. And I lived in Indiana, and I commuted. South Shore, going in. I hated it. I never liked crowds. I'm still a kind of that shy person, and those trains get pretty crowded. So I would find myself driving in a lot of days, which was a pain in itself because traffic's no better than the train. But I was coming home from work on Lakeshore Drive, driving down back to Indiana, and I heard this song on the radio. And it was called You Are His Miracle, and the words in it said, there is no storm, you cannot whisper, peace be still. There is no giant in his name you cannot kill. There is no hold on you he cannot sever. Nothing is too great, not now, not ever. And I'm going to sing the song later. But those lines grabbed me. And I understood for the first time that I am God's miracle. No matter where I am in life, no matter where my walk is taking me, I am God's miracle. And so are you. And I was so excited. I went home and I wrote a song. I just couldn't contain myself. Someday I'll share that song with you, not today. But you can understand the excitement. I got it. And then I got in a relationship that lasted 12 years. Almost great as Gracie's all her whole life, and then some, if you get it. It was misery from day one, and I was stuck. Now you've heard of people being abused. I was emotionally abused in this relationship for 12 years. My mother always called me her butterfly. And it wasn't always a compliment. I would flip from one thing to the other, and I was very meek. And she always told me I'm too meek. I think she wanted me to get a backbone. I think sometimes a butterfly is okay. That's who I am. But I was easily taken advantage of, and this relationship is the biggie. 12 years emotional abuse. And my abuser had multiple personality disorder. And you've seen movies about that. It's everything and then some. 42 personalities. And each one of those personalities had memories, and I was witness when those memories came back. I got post-traumatic stress disorder, and I suffer from severe anxiety. As a preacher's kid, pretty naive, talking about satanic cults. My abuser was raised in these, what was called a satanic cult. I don't think I believe it now, but this is what I heard. And all the damage was done to the personalities. And I was so naive, I honored these personalities, gave them Easter baskets. There's 12 kids. They all got their own Easter. I mean, this is how crazy things got. And then there was a personality that hated my guts. Me. I'm likable. But it broke my heart. Absolutely broke my heart. Very abusive. And I would try to leave, and my abuser would go out and threaten suicide over and over. I remember one time rescuing my abuser off of railroad tracks. Police came, going to kill themselves. It's beyond what I understood as a child. So you can kind of get, this took years and years, and after 12 years, Gracie's whole life, after 12 years I was able to escape. And I did. But I left a son behind who was about 6 at the time and was accused of abandoning him. So I am a mess. But I got away and then was taken to court for custody of my child. And I was able to rally. I actually have a tattoo I'll show you someday. But I know most of you probably don't like tattoos, but it's a butterfly. And in that butterfly is a tiger's face. I was able to be a tiger mama for my son, and I got him back. Praise God. And I went on, but during that time, I was separated from my family, from my friends, from my mail, from my name, from my bank account. And my abuser took out credit cards in my name to the tune of about $25,000. And I found this out after I left. But God was in my life. Remember, I got saved when I was 26. And I was a member of a church again. And I did music again. And I had a concert ministry where I went from church to church, and I told my story, kind of like what I'm doing now. Sang more songs, I'm talking today. But you get the drift. I was doing well. I had a job where I was making more money than I ever dreamed of in Washington, D.C. Forgot to tell you, I moved out to Washington, D.C. in that time. My son actually was not even 2 years old when we moved out there. And I commuted into Washington, D.C. every day. But I got away. I got away. I got a church. Was able to do music and direct the choir and play the piano and do the things that I was comfortable doing. And then, after I got a wonderful job, I bought a beautiful single-family home in Montgomery County, Maryland, which was probably way too expensive for me. And I was doing well. And my abuser came by with a new wife and said they were being foreclosed on. And me, being the kind person I am, said, well, why don't you come on and stay here a couple months, get on your feet. Now, this was about 6 years later after I left. Thinking, nobody's going to take advantage of me. I'm feeling good. They stayed 2 years. And I developed back problems and was on Percocet for over a year. I lost my job, and I started hiding my head in the sand and hiding. And all I could do was sit in my recliner. I know Archie Bunker had his chair, I have my recliner, and I hid. And if I got to the point that I wished I could just melt into that recliner and be gone. That may be suicidal. I was never actively suicidal. But I did not want to exist anymore. I was done. The abuser was still in my life. I let that back in. Now, during that time, my dear mother got sick. And I came out to visit her with a bad back. And funny enough, my abuser drove my car here and then went on up to the Chicago area to visit family. But the last time I saw my mother, my back was just gone. And then that following February, my mother passed away. Broke my heart. But one of the last things she said to me on the phone was, "Get them out of your house." I couldn't move. But somehow I got something together and took them to court, and they were gone. And my son and I were there by ourselves. I was jobless. I had no income. I was not able to get on Social Security disability. And I spent my inheritance from my mother trying to keep my house and to put food on the table for my kid. And it got to the point that I had $500 left. $500 left, that was it. And I called my little brother, my best friend back there. And through his help, he and Lori drove their pickup truck to Gaithersburg, Maryland, rented a moving van, and single-handedly, I couldn't move. I couldn't even help pack. And they moved it all here to Lafayette. He picked out a place for me to live, and here I am. And I have a younger sister that helped me pack a few months before he came. I have my sister Glenda, who was here. I didn't realize she was here today, so say hi to Glenda. She's my big sister. She and my brother Mike gave me money to establish myself and get on my feet. My siblings are my best friends. And God used them as my angels to get me out of that muck I found myself in. And while I was in that muck, I found that I forgot how to reach out to Jesus. Now let's go back to the lady in the story. There's this crowd of people. I picture hundreds of people pressing around Jesus as they're going down this road. He's going to heal this little girl. He doesn't have anybody else on his mind right then. They're talking and chatting and gossiping, and this crowd's following him to see what he'd done. She must have heard about Jesus. Somebody told her. Somebody told her.